I only remember one thing in Delta, and I was only 3 years old. I was left with my grandmother probably while Joyce was being born. And boy, did I hate that. She, in her rocking chair, and had to up against the door, and I couldn't get out. And boy, I just raised Cain, and I don't remember what happened after that, but I'll never forget the feeling of being locked there and couldn't be where I was supposed to be.
And which grandmother would that have been?
It was Grandma Blackburn.
Okay.
As far as I remember, she mean. I thought that was mean in the days. And other than that, I don't know anything about Delta as far as except trips that I've taken back there.
What did your grandfather do for a living at that period in his life?
Well, he was a farmer, rancher. Him and Dad was together on, I think, probably 2 farms, maybe 3, before Dad went out on his own. They worked jointly on farms and ranches. They had a lot of thoroughbred horses and cattle, and run them out in the West Desert up in the Swayze Mountains. And Dad rode right with the rest of the cowboys, and done his thing up there. He'd say overnight, we all know the story about Dad and his rattlesnakes and the Swayze Mountains, where he got appendix and laid out there for 2 or 3 days. And every night he told the story, the coyotes come in closer and closer, and he's by himself. And the appendix caught him. He just there laying on the ground with his horse standing by, and he finally got feeling better and got on his horse. But he talked about the coyotes coming closer and closer each night, and he thought he was a goner, I guess. And he got well and went to the Delta, the doctors, and got some letters from Grandpa talking about his operation, and Dad's earnest back on a job again.
So he did have it operated on?
He did?
No, he never.
I didn't think so.
No, he still got his appendix.
Yeah, he just lived through it. It's terrible pain. I remember him telling me about that story, and it's terrible pain. He didn't think he was going to make it, really.
And then the fear of it is something else.
Yeah. He knew the coyotes were waiting for him to die.
Yeah.
So he wasn't eating those 3 days or cooking for himself or anything. He was just
laying there suffering,
yeah.
I think.
Was he the only son? I guess I haven't gathered that yet either. Was he the only son?
He was the only living son. He had a little brother named, mental block.
I don't remember.
Julius.
Oh,
I think
yes.
his brother's name. He lived to be a few years old, and I don't know just what happened to him, but he had spells and something to do with that, but I never did hear what actually killed the little boy.
I remember Dad telling how they used to catch fish up there in the streams up there when he was a young man. They would go along the banks, and the big trout were underneath the bank, and they would crawl along on the bank and reach their arms under the bank and feel the fish, and then they'd jam their thumb into its gill and pull it out, and the fish would just be shaking like that. That's how they used to catch fish up there, somewhere up in the Swayze Mountains. And I remember him telling me that with his arms shaking back and forth. That was quite an experience to hear about that.
And was that actually where he was raised, was right in that area?
Mm-hmm.
Is that his
Not
beginning?
Delta so much. He's come from Fremont to Delta. He was born in Lower Wayne County, Utah. And then I believe he moved to Fremont, you kind of remember?
Mm-hmm. I've heard telling about it.
And then ended up in Delta. And then he graduated from the Hinckley School, and we just listened out on tape. And Mom also finished school in Hinckley with Dad. Is that the way you understood it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Do you know how they met?
Yeah, let's see. Mom moved to the same country about the time Dad did, I think, and he used to go quite a long ways on horseback to date her with a little buggy. That clock that Carolyn's got, it was a Folks, you probably have seen it. Big, pretty clock.
It's not.
Dad went by horseback. It seemed to me like it was 20 miles to get that clock to bring to Mom.
When they were dating?
Yeah.
Really?
That was my understanding. It's been quite a while since the story.
There's still, this is a little different subject, but there's still a hay derrick that Dad built in that area from logs that they drug with horses from the Swayze Mountains one by one. It was quite a few miles, I think, down to where he built the derrick, and it was a the derrick is still there as far as I know. There's a picture that with Kay and Dad, I think, and the derrick. Were you there at that time?
One of Mom and Kay,
Oh.
the one I've seen.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and so that was a family story that they told about when they built that derrick from the logs from the mountains.
So for those of us city folks, what's a derrick?
A derrick, it's a thing with a big log, a structure with a big log with a hook on it that they lifted the hay up to stack the hay.
Oh, okay, so you kind of lever the hay up?
Yeah, and lever it with this big, huge, like a 30-foot log, big log about that big around. And they would have a hook, a grapple, to lift the hay up into the pile, and then they keep stacking it higher and higher with that big derrick, and somehow with weights on the back of it. I'm not sure how they controlled it, but
And it's still there?
as far as we know. Mm-hmm.
It was horse pulled, I think, too.
Maybe so, yeah, the horse
Yeah.
probably did the levering, I suppose.
And then the time we rolled the hay on a V rope on the slips, remember?
Oh.
Did you get on it?
No, we used the slips in Montana, but
Yeah, Montana, yeah.
but not the roll that you were talking about. Was that with ropes?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
No, I didn't get in on that.
You would go out and load the hay, and somebody on each side and load it and bring it in, and then that V shape had, you just pull on it and it roll up the
I
stack.
can visualize it in my mind.
Yeah. And while Dad was doing that, when I was a little kid, I had a little wagon, I guess it belonged to 2 or 3 of us boys, and I was out there in the field close to where they're putting up hay, and I put a little V rope out there myself, and I was rolling the hay and trying to do it the way my dad did it. I remember that. I wasn't too old anyway, pulling a little red wagon.
The house that they all lived in, we heard that several generations were living in that same house, but I don't know where that house came from. You know the history of the house in Delta?
I was in Delta.
But I mean, did they build it? Did they buy it already built? Do you know anything about
What
its
I've
history?
heard, that Grandpa built it.
Oh, okay.
What have you?
Isn't there still pictures of that?
Yeah.
I think I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah, I think
that
I've got
house.
pictures of it.
Yeah.
It's a stone house. Well, they've moved it now. That's where the airport is now,
Oh.
what I understand. They moved it to put an airport in.